All right, next up we have Ramona Pierson from Pierson Labs, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the future of EdTech. Let's bring up Ramona.
I have to say Pierson Labs was bought, and I'm the CEO of Declare for the last 4 years, so just updating you. A lot happens when you're in Silicon Valley. You get bought, you get sold, you do everything. So my story is interesting, and the company is interesting, and where education is going is really fascinating. My journey started many years ago, and I can't believe I've spent most of my life trying to crack the nut in learning and try to bring global learning to all and democratize knowledge for, well, I won't tell you how long. But, and it's ironic because I spent most of my school years getting kicked out of class, and everybody probably thought at that time I had ADHD. Thank God they didn't have a term for that at that time. So most of the time they'd kick me out and I'd run, 13 miles a day and get ready for school so I could sit in class and get bored for 6 hours. So that inspired me. But what ended up happening, I joined the Marine Corps and became a marathon runner, was heading to the Olympics, and a drunk driver ran me over. And that began my real journey of becoming a lifelong learner and an inventor. So I spent a lot of time, I spent 18 months in a coma, so I spent a lot of time sleeping. And then, and it allowed me to think a lot. But, as an inventor, you have to dream. So the hard part was when I woke up, I was blind, so I had to figure out how am I going to help the sighted people figure out how to not see? No. But I spent 10 years as a blind person, and I had a seeing eye dog. And what inspires me today is that my entire career was around trying to invent things so that I could survive, or like a lot of doctors, and I have to applaud all of you, because look at each other. Value each other, applaud each other, because you're the innovators of the future. If it wasn't for you and other people like you, I wouldn't be standing here today. I wouldn't be standing here today because when I was on that street, someone pulled out a big pen, an interesting innovation, used in a different way, shoved it in my throat so that I could breathe. So my mouth was filled with gore. All these teeth are porcelain and titanium, so my smile's fake. But he saved my life. I ended up at the emergency room, and then a doctor broke the federal law, put me in ice and put me in a drug-induced coma to save my brain so that I'd know who I was. That innovation didn't get approved by the FDA until 6 years ago. So had he not done that, I wouldn't be around. Then I spent a lot of time with them trying to figure out, do we cut her leg off? What do we do? So finally, after 115 surgeries, they gave me a new face. I have a titanium knee. I have a cadaver bone in my leg. I have somebody else died and gave me their cornea. So I have other people's body parts in me. I'm kind of like the Tin Man running around. But the power of innovation is transformative. It will change the world. And I have a couple of slides of showing you how powerful this is. And it depends on a lot of education. And we always are fighting about, do we need the education? Do we need learning? And I think our education model needs to blow up because it's broken. But when you think about where we are today, 20 years ago, half the GDP was grown from innovations, from IP. So between the 1500 and 1600, what gave it the bump? The invention of bottled beer. No, I'm just kidding. But bottled beer was invented at that time. Just write that down. But it was heliocentrism. Heliocentrism, figuring out how to navigate. Because when we finally realized that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, and we figured out that the sun was out there, then people started to question religion and to start exploring. And that started to grow the GDP. The flat line there was all of a sudden we started having arguments of whether education should move beyond the rich people and get into regular people. And what happened in 1700 was the first industrial revolution and also the other revolutions. And that happened because of the printing press. And people started to communicate. But now, the internet, it's crazy. So the internet has transformed everything. But the problem with the GDP today is it's driven by consumerism more than IP. But we're about ready to go through another technical revolution, and I can tell you, if you're on my product, Declara, you'll see the revolution happening with virtual reality, with new kinds of innovations in healthcare. So what's powerful about all of this is that people are connected like crazy. When I started this company and started my journey in learning, I started out in Australia, and then I sold my product to teachers in Mexico. So we have 1.6 million teachers there. Soon, American soccer moms are going to be illegally crossing the line to get their kids into Mexico schools. Kidding, maybe not. But we're in a revolution of learning. The world is getting connected more than ever before. And so when people would tell me, no, we can't bring in your product because there's a digital divide. Well, the digital divide is no longer about who has what and the iPhone or the Android or this or that. That doesn't exist anymore. The digital divide is going to be around who is a maker, who can invent, and who is the victim of technology. That's the future. And so how do we bring democratization of knowledge? How do we break open the doors? Because we no longer need to have multi-billion-dollar textbook initiatives. You know, Texas paid $3 billion to Pierson for a frickin' paper book that by the time it's printed, it's 5 years out of date. Why are we doing that when there's all this content out there? And really, when you think about it, the sum of all human knowledge can be had on your phone. So why aren't we building algorithms to capture that? Well, that's why I invented Declara, so that we could democratize innovations, democratize content, to be able to recommend information to people no matter where they are at any time. So accessibility is accelerating rapidly. When I had a not-for-profit in Africa, and I went to India and been all over the world. And one day I was looking out my taxi window and out in the outskirts in India, and there was a guy on a water buffalo in just his underwear, and I pulled out my iPhone. I'm a good commercial for the iPhone. And started to take a picture of him, and he dug into his underwear, and I thought, well, this is going to be fun. And he pulled out a phone and took a picture of me. Everybody's accessible. So when you think about learners, do you get a diploma and end your learning? Hell no. Sorry for cussing. You can't. You have to be a lifelong learner. Look, I had to learn, well, not that you're going to have an accident, but I had to learn how to be a blind person. And then when I got my eye back, I had to learn how to be a sighted person. And then I had to learn, I'm a neuroscientist, so I learned how to be a neuroscientist because nobody wanted a blind heart surgeon. But they're willing to let you cut in their head if you're blind. No. No, what I did in the Marine Corps was, my job was to write algorithms to reverse engineer where nuclear silos in Russia were so we could melt them and reduce the kill zone. My job as a neuroscientist was to write algorithms and help find better ways to get to shrapnel in the brain because I was having to pay back all my education to the Bush family. Oh, President Bush, sorry about that. Anyway, my servitude. I finished that, and they paid for my IP for $1. That's what the government does to you if you're doing something with them. So I went on, but when you think about it, our learners are connected to everything all the time. So how do we transform education when our brains are completely different? We're asking kids to sit for 6 hours looking at a textbook or just do whatever, instead of getting them involved with solving big real-world problems, when we can connect people and connect all of us. All of us have to be lifelong learners, all of us. You know, when I started Declara, people were just staying in companies for 2 years. Now you're lucky if they stay for 6 months because they're rapidly learning, they're rapidly attributing their code, they're rapidly attributing their innovations and knowledge, and then moving on. And some people look at it as, oh, that's a bummer. But I'm telling you, you're better off for that because you bring in new knowledge. But that also means you can't disconnect. Declara is focused on adult learning more than kid learning because I realized there are so many people that are falling out of connection. Like when you think about all of the investments that are happening in the world, 70% of the people in prison cannot read. I wonder why they're in prison. So if you could pull all of this together, all the costs for having social welfare system and imprisoning people because they haven't had a good education, we could bring money back into the government and back into our workforce. And the workforce is changing. No longer are people going to go to a desk sitting or a cube in your office, but now we have to think of the Uber of knowledge and the Uber of workforce, where we can spin up knowledge workers and have them connect and dissolve those teams, but make them learners and innovators all the time. So how do we change the world? We democratize knowledge. We free ourselves from assessments because there's enough data out there for us to personalize learning for anywhere, anybody, anywhere, all the time, and connect people to their success. Thank you so much.